Hardhat's all about showing up to play hard, doing what it takes to win.
If you want to cement legacy, win another.
He's your third center.
You don't want to puff him up too much, but it's hard not to.
This is maybe the most I've ever agreed with you.
Hey, Bobby Manning here with a practice report from the Auerbach Center. Noah Dalzell alongside, and I missed out last night. Classic
You
Joe
can
Mazzulla
call it
presser.
that. You can say you missed out.
I was actually thrilled that I dodged whatever would have happened to me there. I don't know what it would have been, but instead, several others caught Joe Mazzulla's wrath last night, and I'm sure you guys talked about it a little bit on the show. Why did that happen?
We'll never really know. We'll never really be inside of Joe Mazzulla's psyche, but I do
That's
think
saying
I do think
the
that's
least.
yeah, for sure. But I think if you look at the sequence of questions after this game, and for those of you that haven't seen the full press conference, you can find it on our YouTube channel. But first thing was John Corrales asked Joe about the rebounding disparity. The Celtics were vastly out-rebounded, despite the fact that this was a blowout win, and it seems like that's going to continue to be a theme throughout the season. And if you look at the roster construction, we knew before the season even began that this was going to be the flaw of this roster, right? The front court presence and the rebounding in that sense, and who they lost to. And I don't know if it was the fact that he was immediately asked about that after a win, or if it was about the fact that it is a reality that is kind of undeniable. Like, this has been the theme throughout preseason, that we see these guys have a short leash after missing a defensive rebound. It's like you're getting pulled out of the game. But I think it was the fact that the presser was largely centered around rebounds. And I asked him about whether it's an effort thing or a technique thing. Like, he got a couple questions about rebounding. I don't think he wanted to talk more about rebounding. But it was funny because the one question that got the most dramatic response that we played up multiple times in the show, we even brought Jack on to discuss it. That was not about that at all, and I think that question could have literally been about anything, and it probably would have yielded that answer. So I think there's a level of frustration just around the fact that rebounding is just going to be a struggle this season, and I think guys are trying their best, and it's just like you look at who they have on the floor versus who other teams have and who they used to have, and it's a massive downgrade in that department.
It hasn't been that way in a long time. I feel like we've had maybe 2 rebounding press conferences in 3 years, and I hate it because I think Joe's right. You grab the ball, fight for it, and that's all there is to it. And that's usually what anyone's going to tell you about rebounding. I sent you the Tarian Prince clip from Baylor when he had his famous line about it. So that's just what it's going to be, as you mentioned. Now, how are guys reacting to that? I've found that interesting coming out of yesterday and really the last 2 games because, like you said, they're ripping guys off the floor. They're doing hockey subs, even though they said they weren't necessarily going to. And are the new guys like, what's going on here? Are they understanding where he's coming from? I think guys who have been here understand Joe being a little different than the average coach. But how are these new guys reacting? Gary asked Joe today about that perception of him around the league because, everybody asks, what's your Joe story? What do you think of Joe when you first get here? And they're always like, yeah, I've seen the clips. Joe doesn't love the fact that there's a perception around him, it feels like. Here's what he had to say about that today.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that it's gotten to that point, and it shouldn't be about me. It's just like, at the end of the day, everybody's different. I mean, Chris is a guy that you would motivate completely different than you would a Ugo or a John, and it's getting to know that person, and so I don't want it to become about like, oh, you have to adapt to Joe. No, we got to work together. We have to adapt together on how can we come about a process of like what it looks like to get the absolute best out of you. That's what I think a relationship is, and it's a form of love, and love is interpreted many different ways depending upon what you're trying to do. Love can be graceful, it can be harsh. Love can be a feeling, it could be an action, it could be a bunch of things. And so I think it's just coming together on that. It's not about they have to do this because I said so. It's like, no, we have to do this together because we both agree that this is what gives us the best chance to win. Also, it gives us the best chance for you to get to where you want to get to as an individual player and you to help us get to where we want to get to as a team. So it's a constant, ever-flowing, two-sided relationship. It's not my way or the highway or like you have to adapt to me or do what I say. I have just as much responsibility adapting and growing to that person as they do to me and we do to each other.
So it's funny to hear him say that, though, after a new classic press conference.
I was going to say, I understand he shouldn't be the main story on a basketball team.
But he makes himself.
And I understand, we love the Joe stories.
I love it.
As a reporter, I know if I write a Joe story about the idiosyncrasies and the weird obsessions that he has and the behind-the-scenes stuff, fans love it, players are engaged.
And we knew that was going to be even more the case this year.
Right, absolutely. That being said, I do think the controllable thing is the press conferences. And usually what players tell us is like, yeah, I only ever knew the press conference clips. It's the clips that we're in is the things that Joe usually goes viral for,
Usually
more so
me.
because the other stuff is not it's not public, right? Like how he is at practice, even the timeout huddles. Like the only thing that they have on complete 100% clarity is the press conference clips. So I think that is a different part of his personality than his coaching style, like what he does with the media. It's kind of two different things, but they become a little bit conflated when.
But they're
we ask
interconnected too, because he's trying to send a message usually through what he's saying, and that could be to his own players because they're seeing it too, I'm sure, to some degree. Guys are very online. Guys see how they're being talked about in the media, and I think he sends a message that he's either defending them, like we saw with Hugo Gonzalez last week, or I don't know what his approach usually is in terms of what he's trying to get across there, officiating or any number of things that he wants to get off his mind there. We did hear from a few players today, old and new, about how they're reacting to Joe's coaching style. Josh Minot and Jaylen Brown talking about it today here at practice.
He's really just trying to push me to my limit, trying to get me to play harder, even when I think I'm playing hard, and he's always trying to just get me past that point. Like I said, it's just been learning. I see it as lessons, anytime. I usually know why I'm coming out, and I just see it as a lesson every time. We're just learning. It's preseason. I understand that it's a lot of new people, and he's trying to just instill that Celtics mentality for those of us that are new.
Yeah, mentality. It's all about effort. It's all about the in between, the game within the game, and that's what we got to emphasize most, like winning the fight. I think Joe has put a big emphasis on that from our guys, crashing, rebounding, being a harder playing team. And there's little room for error in that regard. So guys are getting used to that, like whether it's your conditioning or whether it's the pressure of being able to come in and get taken right out. It's a big emphasis right now on winning the margins.
So two interesting things out of that to me, them acknowledging that they're going to be in and out of games a little bit, and it feels more and more like that could actually be the case into the regular season.
Shout out to Jordan Walsh.
And yeah, and I know he deserves an apology, just like Jack did. And then Josh saying, yeah, we actually know when we're coming out of these games. So there is some preparation for how this is going to go. How much are we actually going to see in the regular season? It'd be shocking to me if it's as dramatic as it's been in these preseason games.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about that on the postgame show last night, that you can do certain things almost exaggerated in the preseason because ultimately, the ultimate goal is not to win necessarily. It's not the same. You can kind of exaggerate lessons and things like that. But when they're playing an actual Eastern Conference playoff team, are you going to pull the entire 5 guys that are on the floor because they didn't go for a defensive board? Probably not. There are going to be some guys that are on a short leash. I would imagine somebody like Luka Garza, who seems to be a fringe rotation player, might be kind of. Could give you 20 minutes a night, but also could give you 5. If he comes in and misses a few boards, I would imagine his lease is pretty short. But Joe pulled Jaylen last night. I don't think Jaylen Brown's going to get pulled very often, even if he has a lapse here and there. And he hasn't really been in his career, under the Joe tenure. And I don't think he will be now. So it's going to be case by case. It's going to be guy by guy. But it'll certainly be interesting to watch because this is just such a different team that you can't make mistakes. You're going to lose games. It's such a different way, even just from us covering it. This is a completely different experience because how many times last year and the year before that were we watching a game and we were they played okay, and then they win by 15.
I think you put it well too, the question you asked Jaylen. There were numerous games, Charlotte, whoever, last year, where you just go in and you're like, all right, they're going to win, but by how much? Now, I feel like Charlotte, Brooklyn even, teams like that, even at the bottom of the league, it's going to be like, all right, how's this going to go? I don't know if
nobody's letting their foot off the gas here, unless they come out and they just totally shock us. The big storyline with the Celtics for years, this is even before Joe, is just overlooking opponents, right? Being a little bit passive, blowing leads, all of that. And I just don't think that's going to be this team's issue because it's a bunch of underdogs. Yeah. Minus the couple of returners from the championship team, it's a bunch of guys that are fighting to show that they belong in the NBA and they belong on a roster and that they belong here. And so I don't think you're going to come in and see, Josh is kind of, Josh Minot is sleepwalking or, these are guys that they're so excited to have this chance and they know that they have to be perfect. you see guys like Peyton Pritchard, Derek White, like they're going to have to be more focused on defensive rebounding than at any point in their career just to do their job, right? And so it's going to be fun to watch. I'm looking forward to it. And I think Jalen, part of his like new energy and excitement about the season comes from that as well, is that he knows that every night's going to require like 100% of his best efforts. And that hasn't always been the case.
Yeah, and I'll be curious, and we said this about Joe, but it's for everybody. How do they handle those ups and downs this year? I'm curious to see. Jalen's having fun now before game one, but after a 3-game losing streak, is that how it's going to be? And again, back to last night, Joe, whether it was our focus on rebounding or something that happened or whatever set him off going in that press conference, it was like, all right, this is preseason game number 3, and he's already this wired and fired up over things going sideways a little bit. So we knew that was going to be a storyline we were curious about going into this year, was just how does he handle that after 3, let's say, seamless regular seasons, almost, if you want to call it, perfect.
Not game 2. Game 2 wasn't perfect, but a lot of the first parts of those games I think were huge, and I think the reality is that one of the things I've realized about Joe is that you can't predict, like, okay, they won, he's going to be really happy. They lost, he's going to be really upset. Like, that's just not been the correlation. You ask a question that's critical, he's not going to be happy here. You ask a complimentary question, like, it just, there's not really like a clear formula for predicting how he's going to react to a press conference or to a question. That's been my number one thing that I've been fascinated by since I started covering him a few years ago. Like, you think about how he was after they got eliminated. I mean, that was like the most tempered version of him, you know?
It's almost like whatever position you put out there, he's going to push back on
Or
it.
not even necessarily. I think that there's just, he's looking at it from a different lens than like what we are.
Yep.
You know, like there was something behind yesterday's press conference for sure. It wasn't just 1 or 2 questions. It was the entire demeanor of the thing. So we'll see how the year pans out. I'm very curious. We'll see how the coaching style changes. Derek White, Jalen Brown have both acknowledged that it's already different. But
I thought that was a big takeaway from the last couple of days too.
yeah, Derek had the most revealing one, because I think it was Abby Chin that asked Derek, like, how has Joe's coaching style changed? And he kind of smiled. And sometimes you can see the wheels turning when they're trying to come up with the right answer that's not saying too much or straying away from talking points and things. And you could sense that Derek was a little stumped there for a sec of like, he's really changed, but like, what am I going to say to the media right now? And I think that it's really evident. Like, just from watching him on the bench, you can tell that things have changed. So, yeah, it'll be one of the many fascinating storylines this season.
It might be right up there at the top, regardless of how little he wants to be talked about or part of the story. It just ends up happening with Joe Mazzulla, and here we are again, 3 preseason games in with a major all-time Joe Mazzulla press conference. You can check it out, as Noah said, on CLNS Media, along with all of the conversation from today. It was a lighter mood here today. I think we all broke bread and figured it out. And then we'll be back tomorrow with more from practice. As well as Wednesday's preseason finale, we'll have coverage of here in Boston against the Raptors, who will hopefully actually play their regular rotation players after 3 backup opponents for the Celtics here. For Noah Dalzell, I'm Bobby Manning. There's been a practice report from the Auerbach Center. We'll see you tomorrow.